In this tutorial, we're going to examine how to retrieve trade data for Canada and certain countries from Estat and then graph that within Microsoft Excel. So for example, in the new grade 7 curriculum for Saskatchewan, it says create an inventory illustrating the interdependence of Canada and circumpolar and Pacific Rim countries. Well, one of the ways we can illustrate interdependence is through trade. So we're going to go to Estat. Estat is an educational branch of Statistics Canada. It's aimed at the classroom, and the data you retrieve through Estat is free. If you go to Statistics Canada, you can retrieve some of the same data, but you will be asked to pay for it. So Estat is just at statcan.gc.ca/Estat. And we're going to search CanSim data, and you can do that right here in this link or the link on the sidebar. And we're going to scroll down and choose international trade as the topic we're going to search on. And we'll look for exports first. We can do both exports and imports. Now, what we want is a table that's by country. So you're going to scroll down here, and we find this one, total exports and domestic exports to individual countries. So individual countries, we can actually track each country. Now it says it's terminated. What that means is that there is no data to date, but this one's fairly recent to March 2004, so it should serve our purposes fairly well. We're going to click on this link on the side, the number of the table that we're looking at. And now we have to create our query. So we're going to look at total exports. There's a couple of ways we can do this. We can scroll down and find, I went a little too far, find Asia here. I'll show you another way after this. Then we can start selecting countries. We click on one country, but if we click on a second, we can only choose one country at a time. The trick here is to hold down the Control key, and you can then select multiple countries holding down the Control key for each one. So we'll go Hong Kong, India, we'll pick China and Indonesia, Japan, still holding down the Control key with each click, South Korea, the Philippines, and Taiwan, and Thailand. Then we need to take a date range. Well, here we're mostly interested in fairly recent data. We don't want to look at historical data so much as current data. So we're going to go from January 2003 to December of 2004. And we'll click Retrieve as Table. We have many options here in terms of our table format. We want an option we can import into Microsoft Excel, and that's going to be CSV. And in this case, we'll choose time as rows. So we'll have the countries going across the top and time going down the left-hand side. We'll retrieve that. And it asks us if we want to open up an Excel, which is suitable for our purposes. So we click OK. And here's our data within Microsoft Excel. So now, since we've got historical data here, we want to summarize this in some way. I'm just going to delete this. Click underneath this column for Hong Kong. And to sum that column, we just click on the summation symbol here, which is the AutoSum function. It automatically figures out which cells we want to sum. You can see them highlighted by the marching ants there. And we can accept that by pressing Enter. And we could continue to do that for each of those cells, but it's easier to click on the cell where we have the formula and copy it over by dragging from the bottom right-hand corner. Now we have those totals. Those totals, though, are in thousands of dollars, which is a little awkward, perhaps. So I'm going to right-click on the row. So I clicked on the number 24 there, right-clicked, and I'm going to insert a blank row. And in this row, I'm going to calculate how many this is, or how much this is, in billions of dollars. So I'm going to go equal, and since this is thousands, if we were to divide by 1 million, we would get a value in billions. So I'm going to copy that across now, save myself some time. And that's actually what I'm going to graph. So that's highlighted. I'm going to come up here and hold down the Control key to highlight the labels that I want to use in my graph. Have those highlighted. So again, if you want to highlight cells that aren't side by side, you can do that by holding down the Control key while you click and drag. So we've got our labels, we have our data, now we're going to go to chart it. Click on the chart wizard. Column graph works just fine. We'll click next. Now we see here that our series are not the way we want them. We have series 1. Everything's the same color. We only have one series. So we're going to go change this to columns, and then we get color coding for the countries, and the legend's a little more meaningful down the right hand side. We click next, and we're going to call this exports from Canada to the Pacific Rim, and our years are important here, so we'll go 2003, 2004. Now the category y-axis we have to label so that is meaningful, so we'll go billions of dollars, and we click next. It asks us where we want to put that. We'll put it on a new one. We'll call a new sheet. We'll call exports, and click finish. Here we have our graph for those countries, and we can start to compare the values for different countries. You'll notice that Japan is a very heavy trader for us. I'm just going to take that number 1 out of there. So I was right click and clear. China, also another heavy trading partner in terms of exports. But we could also examine imports. So to do that, we would return to Estat. I'm not going to go through the whole process here, but we want to just show you that it is possible. Come back to here, we'll go to merchandise imports. It's important now that we find data that matches what we used the first time. So we're going to scroll down again quite a ways. One more. And here we have merchandise imports from individual countries, and again the same date range to March 2004. So we're going to click on that. And again, we're going to make our selections, but this time I want to show you another way to select. And this is probably maybe an easier way. We can view a checklist. Now if we go to the bottom, it's Eastern Europe, Middle East, and here's Asia. So visually, this is probably a little bit, whoops. Find that again. Remember, we selected Hong Kong, we selected India, and so on. We can do that here. China, Indonesia, South Korea, Philippines. Now the process after this would be exactly the same. The only reason we went through it the second time was to show you that we can also look at imports as well as exports, and B, there's more than one way to select the countries which we want to retrieve data for. We'd retrieve that data. Again, we would bring it into Microsoft Excel, and we would graph it exactly the way that we did for the exports. And that would allow us to compare our relative trade balances in those countries, whether we in fact export more to India than we do import, and so on. And that's how we can use Estat and Microsoft Excel to show interdependence in trade between Pacific Rim countries.